This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Hey guys, it's Steve. Welcome to the podcast. In this episode, I will tell you a story from the job that I like to call a bunch of dildos. I will also answer some listener questions. Right now, I am currently traversing the world-famous I-10 freeway in Los Angeles. Even the freeways here are famous. I just drove by Los Angeles as the sun is setting. I'm just leaving my security job that I do once a week in Beverly Hills. The sun's setting. Los Angeles looks very pretty. Doesn't always look pretty. It's kind of it's a stinky city. It just is. In the Northeast or even the East Coast, the major cities get rained on a lot. So there's a lot of washing away. In Los Angeles, I noticed that the pee-pee smell from man and beast alike tends to linger longer because they'll literally will be 4 or 5 months with no rain. So it's just kind of a stinky city. But from the safety of the 10 freeway, looking upon it right now as the sun sets, it looks pretty. Even the smog is adding to a certain hue to the sky that is making the ambiance quite nice. So I want to start by apologizing for last week's episode. It was only up for 2 days, and then I had to take it down. What happened was, and what I do when I interview a police officer who's active or retired, I always tell them, listen, I don't put anything up that you don't want people to hear. So if we record the episode and there's some things you want me to like bleep out, some names, or even a part of the interview you're not happy with, I will edit that out. I will never not do that for you because I want people to be comfortable and happy with the interview that we did. And for all 20 odd episodes so far, there's been some times when I've had to go back and maybe cut out part of an interview. You've probably heard me bleep some names or even swears, whatever the guy or gal wanted me to do, I would do. And even as far as if they reach out to me and say, you know what, I kind of wish I didn't do this episode. Could you take it down? I will take it down. I would never leave it up if they weren't comfortable. Is it a pain in my hiney? It's a bit of a pain in my hiney, but it's worth it to keep people happy. And I give my word that I will, so I will. And I don't want people regretting the interview. So in this case, I interviewed someone, and it was fine. But then a couple days after, they decided, you know what? Some of the people here feel like maybe I shouldn't use the agency name so much. We did talk a lot about the agency. I would just kind of be more comfortable if you just took it down. Not a problem. I took it right down. He may come back, and we might have a talk and just leave his agency and where he works out of it, which isn't that big a deal. So maybe we'll just kind of have like a redo of that episode or something like that. But that's why that was up, and then it got taken down. So I apologize if you didn't get to hear it. It was a pretty fun one, but it is what it is. I'm not going to let it sit up there if someone's not comfortable. So that's the explanation for that. So I will start with listeners' questions. I am driving my 2008 Prius right now on the I-10, as I said, so bear with me. I wrote these questions down on a pen and pad earlier, and I looked them over, and I haven't really looked them over since, so it might be a little bit rough. So the first one is, do I work with a lot of ex-military? Do a lot of cops? Were a lot of cops in the military, and is that a helpful thing? I'm kind of paraphrasing what this listener was asking. Yes, there is a fair amount of ex-military in the police force. It's kind of it can kind of go hand in hand. You know, the military is a good prep for police work in a lot of ways. The boot camp you go through, and the discipline, and the learning the chain of command, all that stuff is really good for getting acclimated to what the police is like. Now, the police obviously it's a paramilitary organization that operates in the public, so it's not it's much different than the military, but the basic principles you pick up in the military will definitely help you. And I think just being in the military matures you as a person. So if you're looking at military or college, I wouldn't say one over the other, really. But military is great. And we get a lot of good candidates who were in the military. And a word of advice as a background investigator, if you do go in the military and you go overseas or you're deployed, be mindful of what you're posting, because background investigators look at everything you've done, all the things you've done, and it's easy when you're 18 years old to be in a foreign country, in a battle setting, to post some stuff that just ain't gonna go over well in the States when you're looking to become a police officer. And I've seen it firsthand, so just be mindful of what you're putting up online when you're overseas deployed. That would be my word of advice for you. But it's going to the service is definitely a great prep. And like when I was in police academy, the guys, there was a fair amount of military guys in the in our academy with us, and to them it was like no big deal. The police academy was pretty easy. If anything, they might struggle with the academics, but the PT and the drill and all that stuff was really simple for those guys. So it definitely gives you a good prep for that. Oh, the other thing is if you go in the military, most times you can collect the GI Bill while you're in police academy, which is awesome. So they'll pay you to go to police academy. And I know in my academy class, there was 3 or 4 guys that were collecting a nice check every month for going to school to be a cop. So that's a definite bonus. Next question is, do I have any touching moments or positive moments from being a police officer? And the answer, of course, is yes, I do. The first thing that popped into my mind was when I was very new, and we got dispatched to a mental health call. So there was a young man. He's in high school at the time. He must have been a freshman or sophomore, very young, and he was having some issues. So we got dispatched there. I feel like I was either on training still, like I was with a supervisor in the same car, or at least I was just very new. I can't remember. But I remember showing up there with a supervisor, and this young man had cut himself a little bit, and he was very depressed, and he was, basically suicidal. So me and the supervisor, who was a friend of mine, sat down with him. We chatted with him for half an hour, made him more comfortable, kind of normalized the whole thing so he wasn't feeling so outside of the situation, I guess. And I remember thinking, this kid is a really good kid. He's a really good kid, and I feel like he doesn't even know that about himself, that he's a good kid, and it was depressing, the call. And we had him laughing a little bit, and by the time that it was time for him to go, he happily went in the ambulance voluntarily and went to get some help at the hospital, the psych department. Well, this same kid, who I remember really pulled at my heartstrings, and I really just liked him from the half an hour conversation we had. He was just my kind of guy. He was a good guy. I saw him 2 or 3 years later. I was doing a detail for the high school prom, and here he comes walking in. Obviously looked much different. He was taller, bigger even, looked more like a man, I had a beautiful date with him, And he smiled and waved to me and said hello, and he just couldn't have been happier. Whatever problems he was having had subsided. He dealt with them, and he was just a happy, normal young man. That made me feel really good. I remember that feeling, being like, oh, I wanted to hug him, because he didn't know, but I had been worrying about him, for those couple of years. Once in a while, I would think about that, and just felt so bad for him. But that was like a nice moment. That was really cool. And you will have those in police work for sure. I mean, people, if you talk to cops on the job, there'll be a lot of doom and gloom that just kind of comes with the territory. But people will appreciate you. You'll get notes. You'll get cards. Someone will bake you cookies. You might not eat them because, just a word to the wise. If you want to buy something for a cop, it should be like a sealed store-bought cookie. Will definitely get eaten before a bunch of homemade cookies where people are like, who made this? Why did they? Just cops are naturally suspicious that nobody likes them. So just, if you're going to do that for your PD, like when we bought a bunch of Christmas cookies for our PD in our home city here outside LA, we just bought a bunch of store-bought sealed cookies just so we weren't sprinkling arsenic on them or something. So yeah, you will be appreciated. You'll make a difference in someone's life, and it does make the job pretty great. So that was the first thing I thought of when I read that question. On to the next one. Did I have any realizations about the job that I didn't expect after being on the job for a while? I mean, nothing is really what it seems ever, because things become ordinary. You start doing them and it just becomes your life. So that kind of being a cop kind of wears off and it just becomes your day-to-day. But one thing I didn't really think about or expect was the physical wear on your body that being a police officer has, like putting on the bulletproof vest and the gun belt with the Batman utility belt now. There's so much stuff on cops' belts now. That really wore me down over the years. So I did probably 14 years wearing a gun belt, and right before I left, my if I had to go on a canine track or walk a long distance, my hips were killing me. Even at the end of a normal shift, just walking around with all that weight pulling down and putting pressure on my hip flexors, that really bothered me. There's no better feeling when you're a cop at the end of shift than to take off all that crap you're wearing. It feels so good. So I didn't expect my body to respond the way it did. I even went and got an MRI and X-rays, and they said, yeah, your hips are kind of naturally have shallow hip sockets, so this isn't going to get any better for you wearing a gun belt like that. Because gun belts are 20, 30 pounds, and you wear them every day. And a lot of times I was doing doubles, so 16 hours a day. It was I didn't expect my body to be hit so hard physically that it was. Maybe not exactly what you're looking for in that question, but that's just kind of what popped into my head right now as I careen down the highway at 70 miles an hour. Next question. What skill or quality is essential, in my eyes, to being an effective police officer or a good cop? I think I've said this before. I don't know if it was on my podcast or on someone else's, but just your personability. Is that a word? Personability? Your communication skills, I would say. Your ability to communicate with fellow human beings is the biggest, most valuable thing you can have as a police officer, is controlling a situation verbally. And, there's, on every job, you always have guys that are good at that, and then you have guys that show up to the call and okay, there might be a fight because this guy's not good at it. He's not good at diffusing situations verbally. And there's a fine line, there's you can't let someone browbeat you as a police officer. You have to maintain control, but you need to know how it's not nicely. This isn't a nice word, but in these situations, to be able to manipulate the situation for the best outcome, if you know what I mean. A lot of times you're dealing with people who are intoxicated, or if they're not intoxicated, they're extremely agitated or angry. So they're not, either way, they're not themselves. So you kind of have to be able to if you can craft a scenario with your beer hole to control what's going on, if you can kind of control the situation with your mouth, that is invaluable, because that you will avoid so many things. You'll avoid in some cases being physically attacked. You'll avoid future complaints. You could even avoid an arrest that maybe you're on the fence whether there's going to be an arrest or not. You can really diffuse a lot of things with your mouth. So just, I'd say verbal techniques. Like I had a guest on, Caroline Miller, a friend of mine. She's a DC cop. She's one of my first interviews. She called it verbal judo. Verbal judo is extremely valuable whether you're a man or a woman, I would say. Okay, that will wrap up the listener question portion of this podcast. Next, I will tell you a story from my career. As I mentioned earlier, it's my dildo story. So I'm on midnights. It's probably, I think it was 2 or 3 in the morning. Not much traffic going on. Not much going on. I think it was either the spring or the fall, because it wasn't a busy time of year. Remember that. And I ended up getting an OUI arrest, or DUI, depending where you are in the country, operating under the influence or driving under the influence. So, and there's some details I don't remember, but I remember the main parts of this. I remember pulling this guy over in the south part of town by the Rotary. There's a roundabout on the border of our town between us and the next town. And this guy, I was following him for a while. He was tagging all the lines. I could see he was using his phone. So, when you're following someone like that in a cruiser, it's either like, all right, this guy's drunk. It's 2 or 3 in the morning, so he's probably drunk. You're thinking he's probably drunk. But also you can see him using the phone, so it's like, all right, well, maybe he's lost. Who knows what the situation is? So I'm thinking drunk or lost. And a lot of times it's both. So he's all over the road, pull him over. Now, when I approach this guy and I look at him, he is... Hold on, the notebook just fell over onto the recorder. Okay, I'm back. He smells of alcohol. His words are slurred. His eyes are glassy. He was, going in and out of his lane of travel. So I'm pretty sure this guy's intoxicated. Not only that, his teeth are a nice hue of purple. Like, when you drink too much red wine and like between your teeth collects all that color. Well, his teeth are like that. And not only that, he also has a big red wine stain on the shirt he's wearing. So he has spilled wine all over himself. After a brief conversation, I have a really good suspicion he's intoxicated. We end up doing... he tells me, you know what, I came down here. He goes, it's kind of embarrassing, but I met a couple on Craigslist, and we were gonna have a threesome. I was gonna cuckold the husband, which I had to look it up, but it's when someone has sex with your wife in front of you. So he was here for that. Then he said, I'm trying to get home. He goes, I just keep getting lost in Chatham. Well, this guy is probably 7-8 miles from Chatham. He's 2 towns over from Chatham, so he's really lost. He tried to get out of Chatham and ended up 2 towns in the wrong direction to going home where he lives, which is off Cape. So I go, hey man, you're not in Chatham. You're way off. You're way lost. He goes, yeah, I figured I was. He goes, you know what? I showed up, and he goes, it's embarrassing to say, and this guy's, he's a, short guy. He's got kind of long, scruffy hair, a beard. Not who you would think. I don't know who you would think would cuckold your wife in front of you, but this guy, just a short little fuzzy guy, you know what I mean? And he goes, yeah, I showed up, and they weren't having it, but they felt bad, so they gave me a bunch of wine, and we drank a bunch of glasses of wine, spilt wine on myself, as you can see, and I was just going to count my losses and go home. Then he pulled me over. I'm like, all right, yeah, come on out. Do some field sobriety. So he bombs field sobriety. He gets arrested. So when you arrest someone for operating under the influence, you impound their vehicle. And if your department has a policy to search the vehicle to secure their property, then you go ahead and do that. Well, this is also a really great tool to look at everything in someone's car, because if you have a policy on that, the courts had ruled in Massachusetts that anything illegal that you find is fair game. So, yeah, I'm looking through your car to inventory your property, because we're going to be responsible for your car for the next, for the foreseeable future because of Melanie's Law. We're going to impound it. But also, if I run across evidence that contributes to this crime, that's free game. So if I find half a bottle of booze, whatever. So we're inventorying the vehicle, and this part I'm a little bit hazy on. I think at this point I transport the arrest to the station, and I'm met by someone else in booking, and my supervisor stays behind and inventories for me. Well, I'm in the booking room. He, at some point in the night, after we have him booked, my supervisor says, hey, you got to come over here. And in one of the interview rooms we have in the station, he goes, you won't believe what I found in this guy's trunk. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, it's a smorgasbord of dildos. I'm like, what? So he brings me in. There's a hockey bag just filled with dildos and bondage gear and sex toys. Anything you can think of for kinky sex is in this bag. There's even a dildo that you take and you screw onto a champagne bottle, and then you shake up the champagne bottle and the champagne shoots out of the dildo. That is in there, which is and we only know that because it was attached to a champagne bottle, and we could kind of surmise, all right, this thing's got some kind of plumbing in it. This is what this thing is for. He also has a bunch of drugs on him. That he had amyl nitrate on him, which I think they're poppers. I think it's remember Hannibal Lecter in one of those movies is breaking poppers under a guy's nose, and the guy cuts his own face off. That was amyl nitrate. So I have to look that up because I have no idea what I'm looking at, and I find out, yeah, that's illegal. It's called amyl nitrates poppers, and I guess from what it said online, it says it helps relax the anus. So you can use your imagination there. So he's got that stuff. He also has a bunch of waivers for master-slave sex relationships with what's acceptable behavior, what isn't, safe words, all kinds of just crazy stuff. Me and my supervisor are just like shaking our heads like this is unbelievable. Now the other thing we find, which was maybe the most disturbing, believe it or not, was there's a map of an elementary school off Cape, and there's a couple classrooms circled on this map of the elementary school and a date written on the map. So we're looking at this like, why is this here? Like, why is this elementary school map here? What does this mean? Like, what does this guy plan to do with this map? Like, we don't get this at all. Long story short, the guy was actually, he was like a pretty nice guy. Easy to talk to. He's got a daughter. He's got parent-teacher conferences coming up, and that was a map from his elementary school. And that's where he needs to go. He kind of explained it all away. He definitely is part of that lifestyle, of the S&M lifestyle, the cuckolding lifestyle, all that. He was, we were joking. He was pretty embarrassed about it, but that call to me was like, I mean, this is Cape Cod in like, a slow time of year. And this guy's just kind of banging around our roads, lost after a failed cuckolding. I always thought that was a pretty funny story. Like, you truly never know who you're going to pull over at 2 or 3 in the morning. That is for sure. So I think what happened was, I don't think he even went to court on it, because I think he didn't want to talk about any of this in court, in open court. I think he just took a guilty, and that was that. I have to say, I got a bunch more questions from another listener, and they mostly pertain to undercover work and what that's like. So I was never undercover. I was just a patrolman, and I did a couple undercover like buys, and not of drugs, of stolen property, of all things. I did that a few times. I was a new officer. I worked midnights. People didn't really know who I was, so I could easily, throw on some jeans and a Carhartt jacket and buy stolen property. So that opportunity came up, and I jumped at it. I was like, yeah, awesome, this is cool. So I did that, but I never touched deep undercover work at all. So thank you for the questions. I would love to interview someone who went deep undercover. That would be fascinating. So if you're out there and you did do that, please reach out to the show at thingspolicesee@gmail.com. I would love to interview you. That would be a lot of fun. I want to thank you guys for continuing to listen, continuing to go on iTunes and rate and review the podcast. That's really awesome. You guys are doing that. I've got, I think, 91 reviews now. That it's just awesome. I really appreciate it. I really love doing the podcast, and I'm gonna keep doing it as long as you guys like it. And it can be challenging scheduling my life to find someone to interview. To people are donating their time and out of the goodness of their heart to be interviewed by me for the podcast, and it doesn't always line up. So some weeks it will just be me, rambling like this time. But I hope you guys still enjoyed it. I really enjoyed doing it, and I will see you guys next week.